Today, we're going to unpack an incredibly short ancient text that tackles one of the biggest questions you can possibly ask. What is the foundation of, well, everything? So where are we getting this from? It's a text called the Sutra on the Foundation of All Dharmas. And what's so amazing about this is that it's not some modern take. Nope. This is a direct teaching from the Buddha, translated thousands of years ago. It's super short, incredibly sharp, and it gets right to the point.
And that point is this one single powerful question. What is the root of everything? Your thoughts, your feelings, the reality you live in. Where does all of it actually begin? Well, the sutra's answer is surprisingly simple.
Okay, so how does it all start? The text lays it out like a chain reaction, and it all begins with a feeling that every single one of us knows intimately. And here it is, the foundation, the very first link in the chain is desire. The original character for it is the simple concept that the sutra says is the spark that sets literally everything else in motion. I mean, just think about how true this is. Think about your day so far. That little desire for a cup of coffee, the urge to check your phone, the impulse to avoid a tough conversation. The sutra says that all of it, big and small, starts right here, with this simple, universal wanting. So what happens next? Where does that desire lead? It leads to the next link in the chain, experience. The text calls this the gathering. So that craving for coffee, it's what makes you actually get up, go to the kitchen, and see the machine, smell the beans, touch the warm mug. Desire is the engine that pushes us out into the world to make contact, to gather all this information through our senses. And what happens when we make that contact with the world? We arrive at the third link, feeling. And the sutra has a great name for this. It calls it the common ground. Because every single experience we have, no matter how complicated it seems, gets boiled down into one of just three raw sensations. It's either pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. That first sip of coffee? Pleasant. Getting stuck in traffic? Unpleasant. The feeling of the chair you're sitting on? Probably neutral. This is the raw data, It's the moment before our minds start piling on all the complex stories. So let's just quickly put that chain together. It starts with desire, which is the spark. That leads to experience, or contact with the world. And that contact creates a raw feeling. This is pretty much our default setting for how we build our reality. But, and this is the important part, the sutra tells us this isn't the only way.
This is where things get really interesting. The text then lays out a totally different path. It's not just about how things are, but how we can work with this whole process to find real, genuine clarity and freedom.
The starting point for this new path is contemplation. Now, this isn't just daydreaming or idle thinking. It's a very focused, deliberate way of looking closely at our experience, of seeing things exactly as they are, without all the extra baggage. And when we practice that kind of deep, honest contemplation, it starts to build a very specific mental state. Concentration. You might know it as samadhi. The sutra calls this the highest state, a mind that is totally stable, unified, and laser-focused. So what happens when your mind is that concentrated? Well, what blossoms from it is wisdom. The text calls this the most supreme quality. This is that deep aha insight into the nature of that whole desire, experience, feeling chain we were just talking about. And from that, true wisdom comes liberation. I love the language the text uses here. It describes the state as solid or firm. This isn't some fleeting good mood. It's an unshakable freedom from being constantly yanked around by the push and pull of desire. So let's trace this path to understanding. It all begins with the active practice of contemplation. This practice develops deep concentration, which in turn allows real wisdom to pop up. And that wisdom is what ultimately results in a lasting liberation. It's basically a clear, step-by-step training manual for the mind. Okay, that all sounds great in theory, right? But how do we actually do it? How do we practice? Well, the sutra gives us a very specific list of things to contemplate to get started. The sutra gives us a whole toolkit of things to reflect on. Things like impermanence, how everything is always changing, or the nature of suffering, not to be depressing, but to really understand where it comes from. It even suggests contemplating death, to give us a sense of urgency and purpose. Now, these aren't meant to be grim exercises. They're actually powerful tools for stripping away our illusions and seeing reality just as it is. And the goal here is super direct. The text says it's to cut off craving and abandon desire. By looking at reality in this clear-eyed way, we start to loosen the grip of that very first link in the chain, that raw desire, and we make space for wisdom to take its place.
And all of this brings us to the final, ultimate destination of this entire path. Where does it all lead?
The sutra concludes with this really powerful, definitive statement: nirvana is the ultimate. That's it. It's the final word.
And what that really means is that this whole journey, from understanding desire all the way to practicing contemplation, isn't just a process for its own sake. It has a clear destination: nirvana. It's the shore on the other side of the stormy waves of suffering. It's the foundation of a real, lasting peace. So in the end, the core message is that it all begins with desire. And from that single starting point, this ancient text shows us two possible paths we can take: one of automatic habitual reaction and another of conscious, wise cultivation. Which really just leaves us with one final question to think about. Your path also begins with desire. Where is it leading you?